this video, I want to tell you a little bit about how my first year of studying a bachelor's degree in Addictology went. And I would like to take a look at the classes I took, kind of evaluate them, and give you some tips on passing them. And before we start, I just want to point out that I did my degree in 2017, I did my first year in 2017, and some things might have changed since then. I also did a distance study program, which is structured differently from the full-time one. And the difference is mainly in the time organization of the classes, not in the classes themselves. And I will split this video into sections according to different groups of classes that I just find is natural. And it is Addictology, Biology and Chemistry, Healthcare, Psychology and Psychiatry, Social Sciences and other. And yeah, some of these might probably overlap, but I grouped the classes to the best of my judgment. As for the time requirements, the distance program I did provides kind of more flexibility than the full-time program. And it mainly involves blocks of classes where the classes are organized into these blocks that last either from Friday to Sunday or from Monday to Sunday. I think we had 2 or 3 of these. Plus you also need to do 2 weeks of internships. And attendance is generally mandatory and they actually monitor it. So it is something that can get pretty time consuming. And it can be difficult to combine, for example, with a part-time job or a job. And in my case, I also studied a different bachelor's degree at the same time. I did molecular biology and I also worked part-time. So that was pretty difficult for me. School will just take a lot of time from you, not just the classes, but also preparing for the classes and writing essays and studying for tests and stuff like that. So if you work, there's a huge chance that school will deplete all of your PTO or holidays and stuff. And I certainly wouldn't discourage you from studying because of this, but it is something you need to take into account. And in my first year, I enrolled in 28 classes and completed 26 of them. And that might seem like a high number, but most of them were mandatory and is according to the study plan. And of those I didn't complete, one was completely voluntary and one was elective. And for some reason, it just never took place. I don't know why. And I completed 59 credits. And the total number of credits you need to collect during your bachelor's is 180. So that means you need to aim for 60 per year or 30 per semester. And I don't remember exactly what the minimum per year is. But for example, at the Faculty of Science, we had to have at least 45 credits to pass to the next year. And keep in mind that most of the classes are mandatory, but you also have to choose these elective subjects. Or at least we had to, and I don't think they changed that. So it's good to plan accordingly. And let's start with the first category, which is Addictology specific subjects. And there aren't really many of them in the first year. I only included 3 classes in this category. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. You need to know the basics first before you specialize, right? So you need to understand biology and psychology and how things work and stuff like that, and then you can specialize. So I included these 3 subjects is Introduction to the Studies of Addictology, Primary Drug Prevention, and Practicing in a Selected Facility 1. Introduction to Studies of Addictology is exactly what the name promises. You learn a little bit about the field, a bit of history, a bit about the work, a bit about how the program will proceed and work, a bit about the individual disciplines in addictology, and this class was kind of supposed to be an introductory class to help you get oriented in the study program and give you an idea of what to expect. And there was a test, which I think I took, and you had to write an essay of 10,000 characters. Which I honestly don't remember writing, but I think I must have, since it was a requirement. I probably submitted something. Primary drug prevention is a very important topic, and in addictology, primary prevention is about preventing the issue in the first place. I liked the teacher and I was interested in the subject, and for a while I even considered specializing in primary prevention, which I didn't do in the end. The exam had a success rate of 1, so easy peasy. And finally, Practicing in a Selected Facility 1. And this is a class that I struggled with so bad every year. But at the same time, it was the class that I found the most useful and interesting one. And you really get a chance to try and kind of see what an addictologist does on a daily basis or what they can do. But the class itself is incredibly time consuming. It's basically 2 weeks, 2 full-time weeks of your time. Plus you need to write reports and a case study. But if you're interested in my internships in more detail, I made a video on that, so you can find the link to that video in this video's description if you're interested. Well, let's move to the next category. This one is extremely important and I think interesting, and that is biology and chemistry. Addiction is a complex problem that cannot be approached from just one direction, and understanding the biological and chemical processes in your body or in the human body is essential and incredibly interesting. At the same time, at least anecdotally, from what I've heard from my classmates, these are the classes that people are afraid of the most, and they even think that they might not be able to finish the degree because of this category. But I want to say that even though biology or chemistry or whatever might seem scary, it's not that bad. It's mostly memorization, you can do it. There's no reason to be afraid, but you might need more prep time for these classes. And I think I said it many times, but I think the coverage of natural sciences could be handled better in the program. It's kind of shallow, I think, and there could be better integration. It's hard to say what things would have been like if I didn't study the other bachelor's degree, the molecular biology one. But I feel like if you want to specialize in this direction, then addictology is probably not for you. And I actually made a video about that, studying addictology for you. So I'll put the link in the description and you can watch it later. And now let's dive into the natural sciences classes. In the first year, we have chemistry and biochemistry, physiology 1, human biology, and anatomy. Chemistry and biochemistry was not what I expected. At all. I thought it would be about calculating chemical and biochemical reactions, and thought it would be the chemistry in biochemistry. But it wasn't. In reality, it was more interaction to various compounds, metabolism. I feel like the function of various organs was kind of disproportionately addressed. And it was definitely more bio-focused than chemistry-focused. But there were no calculations at all, so if you're afraid of calculations, don't be. I know that some people were scared of this class, but you mainly need to memorize things. And it's good to write everything down and kind of prepare and stuff like that, but no reason to be scared of this one. Or at least there wasn't when I took it. Physiology 1 was an incredibly relaxed experience with plenty of interesting information. And of course, my opinion might be a bit biased because I actually considered studying physiology for my master's degree. But you will learn more about the processes that are happening in the human body regarding nutrition and metabolism and what happens in cells and so on. And the credit was, I think, for attendance. And if you missed it, then you took a test or something. It was a really chill class. Human biology is a lot about genetics, so I didn't really pay much attention in this class because I kind of knew genetics from the other degree that I did, which kind of backfired because I didn't really prepare for the exam, and I was like, I'll remember that. I did not remember that. I passed, but it was not a good grade, but I mean, that doesn't matter, right? Passing is a success. And anatomy is the one that everyone is afraid of. It's the scariest class of the first year and maybe of the whole program. And addictologists have somewhat a simplified version of anatomy, and there are fewer visits to the dissection room compared to, for example, medical students, but there are some, and honestly it's fine. I had to take the exam twice. You had to learn about 70 questions about the human body, and then you were tested on 3 of them. And even as someone who usually kind of studies for exams last minute and relies on good memory, I started preparing months in advance. And I even borrowed a book, Chehak's book, from a friend who studied medicine. And it was a great idea, it really helped me. And I drew everything, and I wrote everything, and I memorized everything. And the biggest pain point of this class, or what I think people really struggle with, is fear. many people are afraid of the exam and they kind of procrastinate and they miss good exam dates and have trouble like getting into the later ones because everyone wants to get into those, right? And there's no time left and everyone is stressed. Anatomy is a class that many of my classmates actually carried over to the second year. So my main tip is don't be afraid. Start preparing early and plan to take the earliest exam date possible. You can even start preparing at the beginning of the first year and kind of just like read a question a day to truly like go through everything because there's like a lot of stuff. And for addictologists, there was a huge emphasis on understanding the nervous system, and gaps in knowledge in, for example, like the muscular system were not judged as strictly. But yeah, anatomy is one of the hardest classes you will have to go through in the addictology study program. And in the healthcare category, I included 2 classes, and that is first aid and selected chapters from nursing plus practical training. And these are 2 classes that I recommend going through like thoroughly, and really don't neglect them and learn everything you can. They are extremely useful. It's something that everyone should know how to do. Like, you need to know first aid, you need to know how to take care of sick people. It can literally save lives, so don't cheat on these exams. It's not worth it. So first aid is a very useful class and something that should be taught everywhere, and everyone should have some basic knowledge. And it's one of those classes where it's really not worth trying to cheat. Besides like the practical exam, you also write a test and just prepare for it, just know the stuff. You need to be prepared for crisis situations, and as an addictologist, you are a healthcare professional and you are legally required to provide help. I mean, technically everyone is legally required to provide some form of first aid in the Czech Republic, but even if it's just like calling an ambulance, but as a healthcare professional, you should kind of be able to do more, right? And you also have a bigger responsibility. And then selected chapters from nursing is a important and useful subject that I definitely recommend not neglecting. You will learn a lot of important things about collecting biological material, which can also be useful in your personal life, such as how to properly collect your urine for your doctor, and about like treating minor injuries and caring for the sick. And this class also included a practical training where you can try some things out. For example, we tried like invasive collection of biological material. We, pricked the finger and collected the blood, which is something you cannot do as an addictologist, not legally anyway. But we tried it and it was awesome. Psychiatry and psychology are 2 areas on which like addictology builds upon, and there is often this like overlap and collaboration among experts in these fields. There are facilities that have these multidisciplinary teams that consist of experts from these fields. And understanding how the mind works is probably even more important for an addictologist than understanding how the body works, even though both are important. Plus, it's extremely interesting, and I think most people agree on that, and I think most people love psychology fun facts. The classes I included in this category is Basics of Psychology and Communication, Psychiatry 1 and 2, Pedagogy and Special Pedagogy, and Developmental Psychology. Honestly, I don't really remember introductions to psychology and communication. I mean, to be fair, I had quite a lot of psychology classes in high school, and I probably prioritized other classes. And I passed the exam on my first try, so it probably wasn't difficult. I didn't pass it with the best grade. Probably means that I was like, oh yeah, I'll remember everything, and then I didn't. It's not always like a good strategy, but, I passed. Psychiatry 1 General Psychiatry was a great class, and the teacher is skilled, educated, and generally a pleasant person who is nice to listen to, and I'm glad I attended these lectures. We are introduced to basic concepts and terminology and symptoms and areas of mental functions and what can go wrong. Psychiatry 2 Special Psychiatry was basically a follow-up, again with the same excellent teacher. And it was another great experience that I enjoyed. This class kind of touched addictology, it was addressing disorders that were caused by, using addictive substances. Plus there was some diagnostics. And both classes were incredibly interesting and the teacher was awesome. And if the teacher is still the same as it was back then, I recommend going to lectures and listening to him. Education and Special Education was another class that was taught by a very nice lady. And what's special about this one is that in Addictology, not that many people specialize in children. And it is important to understand what's happening in a child's mind, right? It's not a negligible group. Most people who deal with children don't really deal with their problems like they deal with primary prevention or something. But children are not negligible. And again, I think understanding children and kind of working with them or knowing how to work with them is an important life skill. I don't really remember all that much from developmental psychology, but I definitely remember that to take the exam, I had to take a bus somewhere, I don't know. And the name describes exactly what you should expect from this class. It's developmental psychology. And I think it's an interesting field and you get to know these funky theories about what people had in the past. Many of them are really funny, so yeah, I do recommend knowing them. There are 4 classes that I would classify as social sciences, and that's legal basics for addiction specialists, introduction to sociology and social psychology in addiction studies, ethics and philosophy, and social work and policy. And I can tell you very little about these subjects. I kind of don't remember them. Yeah, it's not my area of expertise. I remember nothing about legal essentials for addictologists, introduction to sociology and social psychology in addictology, and ethics and philosophy. I think we had to write an essay in ethics and philosophy, and I probably chose something with death, because that sounds like something I would do. But I do remember social work and policy 1. I swear to God, I had a variation of this class with this teacher about 1 million times in the program. And no matter how many times I had to learn the pillars of social support and various benefits, it just never stuck. I don't understand these things and I can't remember them. And the social system is about as daunting to me as chemistry is for someone else. Which is a shame, because I think you should probably understand these things. I think you should be able to orient yourself in the system you live in. Plus, it's useful professionally for working with certain groups of clients, right? But I can't. I tried so hard. I can't. It's so complicated. And for the last category, we have other. And I included elective classes such as methods of body-centered therapy, training in communication skills, basics of administration, basic principles of professional information, and I also included foreign languages and medical terminology. Methods of body-centered therapy was a great elective class that is taught throughout the year, so I attended it with the full-time students, and unfortunately that meant that it was unavailable to many people who only traveled to Prague for the blocks. But it was great to learn about these methods and to try them, and if you have the chance to enroll, I would. Training in communication skills is another elective class I don't really remember. Basics of administration was meh, I probably needed the credit. And I would also like to mention social deviance, which was an elective class that I and a couple of my classmates enrolled in, and no one ever contacted us. And as far as I know, I don't think the class ever took place. Basic principles of professional information is a class where they tell you that you can work with resources and that Charles University has a library. But it was mandatory, so I had to take it, right? Basic medical terminology is a class that I didn't group into healthcare because it literally just involves learning the basics of Latin and a bit of Greek. And personally, I loved this so much. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Latin. Studying Latin and Greek at the Faculty of Philosophy was something that I dreamed of for 10 years, and I knew I wanted to do that, and then I didn't, so I was really glad I could take this class and kind of just live it again. I graduated from Latin when I was in high school. I'm a huge fan, but to be fair, most people aren't. It's a mandatory subject, and for me it was a pleasure. But even if you don't enjoy these languages, you literally just take a short test. It's the basics. It's some declinations, conjugations, and yeah, love it. And finally, foreign language. This is probably my favorite story from school because we had to choose between English, Russian, and German. And I was like, I already know English. I don't want to learn Russian. So yeah, let's go for German. And I took this test that assessed my level, which corresponded to not knowing German. So I didn't know any answers on the test. And then I went for my first German class, and there were only about 3 or 4 of us. And the teacher came to me with the test, and she was like, how did you score so few points? And I was like, that's because I don't know German. And she was like, oh, nonsense, you just have to believe in yourself a little. And I was like, yeah, that's not a problem with self-confidence. I don't speak German. I never took German lessons. And she's like, what are you doing here? Well, what I thought was German for beginners was actually German for healthcare professionals. Well, anyways, I passed that class. I know, I'm really good. I did it. I just grit my teeth and I did it. I learned enough German to pass this class. And then I forgot everything. I still don't know German. I'm sorry. I'm trying to learn a couple of words here and there, but nothing too fancy. And that covers the classes I completed during my first year of studying addictology, and I really hope this video inspired someone or helped someone not to be afraid or to get an idea of what a first year of addiction studies can look like. And of course, things may have changed since then, or you're studying a different program elsewhere, but I still hope this video helped someone. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in addiction-related topics, you can follow my channel. I try to make interesting videos on interesting addiction and drug-related topics, and have a great day. Bye!